Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. It's me, Gamerturk, and this is kind of a trial run for something we have been planning at SAO Wikia. Something like a podcast. Of course, this one is not live because it's a test thingy. But Gsimenas, the SAO Wikia Overlord, is right here with me. If he can confirm if I pronounce this name correctly, that would be great.
Yes, I'd say that's correct.
That's good. So, what we plan today is, well, Sword Art Online Volume 25, Unital Ring IV is coming out tomorrow in Japan. In fact, it's less than 24 hours, right?
Yes, it's about 21 hours from now.
Cool. I assume you're gonna start reading it when it comes out?
Yeah, I've made some time tomorrow to read it. I'm not sure if I'm gonna finish it though. Because the book is it's pretty long.
Do we have the page info?
I think we do. I'm not sure if it's the final one. Because sometimes placeholder counts are posted instead.
Oh. So things can change.
I haven't checked it in several weeks, so I'm not sure. Really.
Anyways, as I said, this is more of a test run. It's pre-recorded, but in the future, if you guys are interested or, we actually enjoy doing this, maybe we'll switch over to live streams or even live Q&A stuff, depending on how things go. We'll see about that after this goes live, of course. But today we want to talk a bit about Unital Ring in general. So the general structure is gonna be, you first gonna start with some basic Unital Ring stuff, the plot, the involved characters, what's actually happening and stuff, and then we're gonna move over to the Sword Art Online Volume 25 Unital Ring IV illustrations that we received recently, well, leaked recently, most of them. We don't have much context on most of these illustrations, so we'll just speak where we can, where we have something to say, or just, show them and gloss over because we don't want to contribute to anything misinforming potentially. But starting with Unital Ring. Yes, it is called Unital Ring, which is written as such in kana in Japanese. Makes it very clear it's not Unital Ring. Let's get that out of the way first. But, okay, Gsimenas, what is actually Unital Ring? What is happening there?
Unital Ring is basically a game where all the other games are just mashed together.
Are they just mashed together at the same time or like gradually coming in, like expanding?
At the same time, as far as we know.
But the characters do appear later on, like Sinon and Leafa on the cover of the second Unital Ring volume. They start entering the scene there instead.
Not all the characters were in the game when the whole merge thing happened, while some other characters were in the game, but in a different location, so they weren't relevant for the first volume, because it would just be too much to handle in one go.
And what's the situation in the actual games? Do we know if they're still functioning, despite missing chunks of their system?
No, they're all functioning. At least the ones that are connected to the seed.
Sorry, can you say that again?
At least the ones that are connected to the seed are not functioning, and the administrators don't really know what to do to fix things.
So pretty much Unital Ring is the only one that's going on with the seed nexus.
Yes, as far as we know, that is.
As far as we know, yeah. We'll see what alternative GGO does.
After all, Underworld is actually based on the seed, but it's currently not connected to this Unital Ring game.
But it also does not have a public entrance, does it?
Public, maybe not. But Kirito isn't the only one who has had access to it lately.
Oh. Now, while I do know quite a lot of things that you're saying, that was news to me. Or maybe I'm not interpreting correctly, but we'll see. We'll get there. So in Unital Ring, in the game itself, which characters actually appeared so far? Well, we can see a lot on the covers that I'm showing right now, but in general.
So aside from the obvious Kirito, the first volume also had Asuna, Alice, Leafa, Silica, Lisbeth, a few new characters, and a few characters got mentioned but weren't awfully important. Oh, and I forgot to mention Yui, too.
So Yui, as an NPC, she's no longer an NPC, unlike the previous games.
No, in this game she's just as any other player, so she doesn't have any other admin functions to access the server database and tell everyone what's going on.
And if I remember correctly, even the menu systems and stuff were different in Unital Ring, but that would be going too much in depth, I guess. You guys can check our introduction to Unital Ring 1 if you're interested. I believe we mentioned that over there. We're quite detailed in that introduction. But yeah.
I honestly don't remember what we mentioned back there.
That's fine. I do remember. Wait, you say you don't remember? I thought you were the walking encyclopedia or something.
I don't remember what we mentioned.
Anyways, Reki said Unital Ring 3, so the third book in the most recent arc, was almost the midway point of the story. What's going on there? What's exactly the structure?
Well, it's not exactly the midway point. It's based.
Almost.
He was talking about a Japanese and Chinese narrative structure called Kisho Tenketsu. It's a format that comes from Chinese poetry, where basically the story is divided into 4 bits. The first one is Ki, which stands for introduction. It's the part of the story where the characters and the setting for the story is introduced to set the stage for the rest of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Sho stands for development. It's the part of the story where that builds upon the introduction to lead it to the twist. Now, Ten, which stands for twist or turn, is where this format differs from Western one. It's the part of the story where something is introduced to throw everyone for a loop. Unlike Western climaxes, though, the point here isn't necessarily to advance the plot, but the point is here to subvert the reader's understanding of the topic or to recontextualize it. Basically, to see all that came before in a new light. And Ketsu stands for conclusion. It's basically where the consequence of said twist. Now, Reki was talking about that he was midway through the show part. However, just because they are divided into 4 bits doesn't mean that they're of equal weight. Introduction, for example, the Alicization first 3 volumes kind of follow the same format with their names. Alicization beginning could stand for Ki. Alicization running can stand for Sho. Alicization turning could stand for Ten. But then you have 7 other volumes that don't quite fit.
And I mean, uniting kind of comes in with another turning point, right? It's not like it had a single turning. Well, in terms of structure itself.
It's currently still in the show phase, so it's still in the development as far as we know. So the twist hasn't yet arrived.
Oh, I was talking about Alicization. Like you said, we had a turning that still matched the structure with every single volume. But then like with Alicization uniting, at the end of it, that was the climax, but that was also a massive turning point as well, which just spiraled into yet another narrative that came after it.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that reference in mind, do you think whether Reki is actually gonna stick with the structure the way it is, or just will just go something like Alicization, overwrite again?
Knowing him, he's definitely going to write more than he's saying. The only question is how much?
That's kind of a Reki thing to do, isn't it?
And as I said,
of a Starless Night.
In the midway point of the story. He's just in the midway point of the show phase. So it's still open-ended on how long the whole thing will actually be. And knowing that he can't actually fit his stuff in a single volume most of the time, it will probably get out of hand sooner or later.
And even then, we may just get a massive twist somewhere down the line and go a different direction anyways.
We're still waiting for that twist.
We still don't have a proper, antagonist, an end point in regards to the narrative in sight at all, right? We're like It's like Alicization running, where we don't even know anything proper about Queenella. We're just trying to get to the central cathedral for an admin console, rather than having a proper conflict in sight for the endpoint. In terms of an antagonist.
Well, we kind of do have a new antagonist in the latest volume, that aside from this upcoming one. But I wouldn't say that she's the end game antagonist.
That was exactly my question.
Because she is an antagonist, but whether she will be the final one.
And we don't know her goals either, do we?
So far, not really.
We still have so much to learn. Let me see, what do we have on our list? I may even end up trimming this portion because I'm looking too much on the questions I have written. We'll see. Ah, right, this was actually tying into my previous one. Did Kirito ever sense something was off? Like earlier in Alicization, when he figured out the error 871, code 871, he was like, why is this thing here? This cannot be here based on, you know, Wrath's objectives. There must be something else going on that's not tying into the current stuff we have at hand. It's kind of a too detailed question, but I'm interested.
Well, the only thing I can think of is that in the latest volume, Kirito encounters a situation where he realizes that the game is actually testing how far do you think of it as a game, as something with constrictions where the system limits how you can act. Because when he tries to solve a situation without this preconception of how the game system works, he actually finds out that he can do stuff that he didn't expect to be able to actually accomplish.
So game is like implementing arbitrary limits at some points? Is that what you're saying?
No, as in basically gamers expect games to work in a certain way, while Unital Ring actually tests how much players are willing to scrap those preconceptions and actually play with the game system.
That's very similar what Kayaba did, isn't it? Nobody expects to dive into a game and end up actually dying in real life. God damn it, that was a slight joke. You should have chuckled.
You'll need to try harder to make me chuckle.
Let's move on to the illustrations, shall we? I mean, now that we have given some sort of an overview for Unital Ring.
Sure.
So, Unital Ring 4, we have... I actually really love this cover. I mentioned this in my own video. It's very similar to Volume 18, Alicization Lasting cover for me, with Kirito and Asuna right front and center, with Mutasina in the back, similar to Gabriel Miller back there. And on the top right, if I can actually zoom in, we saw a different figure that we speculated was Eolyne Herlentz. We're gonna talk a little bit more about him later in the video, which turned out to not be Eolyne, but someone else we're gonna talk about in some of the later illustrations as well. What am I going for here exactly? Well, I wasn't actually going for anything, I was just sharing my opinions. If you wanted to share your opinions, you can join in as well, but...
Well, I haven't read the book, so I'm currently trying to keep an open mind on what to expect from it.
It's art, GSI. Does it look cool or not?
Yes, it does look cool.
Thank you. So, one of those things that may grab your attention is, well, something you have seen in earlier illustrations as well here, is that Kirito actually does have armor in 3 of the 4 covers Unital Ring received so far. And the third one is a cover from Underworld, so that makes sense. He has his old, the Rising outfit. I always call it the Rising outfit, but in Unital Ring he does have an armor. The only time I remember him wearing armor is the Floor 40 adaptation in Integral Factor, where he was trying to disguise himself in a large chunky armor, which is non-canon. Is this the first time he actually wore
Actually,
proper armor in the main canon?
Actually, that may be based on Progressive Follower 2, where he actually disguised himself to uncover a scam.
I knew I remembered it from somewhere else.
But I haven't played Integral Factors, so I have no idea what you were referring to. Just that I know
Well,
that
it was
even
hopeful
in
chant
canon,
for
he
the second
actually dressed in
time, but
armor.
I gimped hopeful chant, where Kirito and Argo just saved everyone. That's completely irrelevant. Why does Kirito have a proper armor in Unital Ring? And it's a pretty constant thing, it's not a disguise.
That's basically just a turn of events. He was stuck in his underwear for most of the volume, and then he just got ambushed by a few guys that he wasn't expecting to be hostile to him. And he just happened to have a lot of materials around it. He was for an entirely different reason. And so those materials were just used to make armor to eliminate the hostiles. So it's not something that actually happened intentionally. It's more of that happened. So
It's
if
nice
we
that
already
you...
have armor, so why not use it? And iron armor is stronger than pretty much anything else basically any other player has.
And probably better than being naked, I'd imagine.
But far less funny.
But good that we actually mentioned this more in depth than I intended, because that reminds me, we didn't talk about what kind of a game Unital Ring was. It's, as you said, it tries to break the preconceived ideas that people have about games, but it still does fit into a genre, doesn't it?
Well, it's technically fits in to the survival genre, where basically each player has a single life, and if they die, they can no longer access the game with their account.
So unlike the previous games, well, also unlike SAO, but SAO was already its own little isolated thing, when you die, you can no longer access the game at all in Unital Ring.
You can no longer access the game, but that doesn't mean you actually die.
Yes, so you're still alive in the real life. It's not a crisis situation.
And like any survival MMO, it's heavily based on crafting all the things that you need to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And by survive, I don't just mean surviving in battles. Just staying in the game means that you need to eat, drink, or else you'll experience hunger and thirst, the likes of which really feel realistic.
So it's through and through survival game.
Pretty much.
That's nice.
I heard that it's being compared to games like Ark Survival or what was it called?
Oh yeah, that was definitely
I never played it, so I don't really know what it's like.
I never played it either, so I wouldn't know. But just to make that comparison to something like Accel World, it's just that you lose your access to the game. Nothing else happens to you, right? You don't lose your memory or anything.
Not as far as we know, at least.
I'm really curious how long this is gonna take. With that, let's jump over to the actual illustrations within the book. So, the first one, we have Kirito and Asuna fighting against the... what was it? The Life Harvester?
Yes, the Life Harvester. Basically, a Skull Reaper ripoff.
So you also join in on the comparison that it's the Skull Reaper
It literally gets compared to the Skull Reaper in the novel and on the very illustration.
So wait, you said it's already compared in the novel as well. Did we see this Life Harvester in the previous book?
It appears in the final chapter, but I don't think it had any illustrations. But it literally got called the equivalent of the Skull Reaper in Unital Ring, just even stronger than the original.
Oh, it always has to be stronger, otherwise it's not as impressive. So next one, we see Mutasina, Kirito and Asuna, as well as the two of Mutasina's henchmen right there. All of them have somewhat of an aura around their neck. Kirito is, I believe, even holding his neck with his hand right there. We see it around Asuna's neck as well, and Mutasina's staff is glowing. tell us about the toy Mutasina has.
Basically, in the previous volume, Mutasina decided to be a very big bitch by infiltrating a player gathering and then branding them all with a spell that once cast on a player, it allows her to basically remote control suffocate them.
So basically
from
a force
from
stroke
any
item.
distance, for any period of time, for as long as she's alive. And Kirito just happened to be inside that venue, so he got branded with the spell too. Asuna, on the other hand, wasn't present, but it looks like she may have suffered the same thing in this volume.
And it looks like the two henchmen are there with the brand as well, as far as we can see.
All of her henchmen have the brand. Even her own teammates knowingly allowed themselves to be branded.
Oh, so even her actual allies, the ones that are with her from the beginning.
Yeah, they were aware of it and they didn't oppose it.
Well, that sounds like a fun game that
And
they need to
And
include
in this
Pedram along.
illustration, it looks like she triggered the spell and everyone who had the brand is getting suffocated.
And then she's using this to just use the masses as her army.
Basically, if you want, you can just log out of the game and not experience it. But if you want to actually play the game and see it to the end, you have to listen to her, or you'll be in constant choke mode.
Some people are gonna enjoy that.
Yes, I can already see the masochist and sadist versions of this thing.
M is probably crying on his bed that he didn't get a chance to dive in.
You never know.
Do we know anything about alternative Eugeo? When's the next one coming? Or if he's ever gonna do anything with Unital Ring? Or is it just gonna get accidentally confirmed non-canon like Girls Ops?
I also don't know what it's going to do with it. I haven't read anything past the anime, to be honest. So I don't know where the story went there.
Are you ever gonna read them?
When I have the time, and I'm kind of lacking on that.
So, I already switched over to the next illustration, by the way, for a while now. I was just rambling. But yeah, I don't think...
Thanks for informing me.
Sorry?
Thanks for informing me.
You're welcome. Sorry, this is the first time we're doing this. There's gonna be hiccups, you gotta understand that much. So we have an illustration with Stica, Laurannei, Alice and Asuna. I don't think we have a lot to say about it, if anything at all. I mean, they're all in Integrity Pilot uniforms. But aside
and
from
we don't
that...
really have any context for this scene.
Yeah. I mean, they are happy, and that's the context we have. Did they get any Integrity Pilot uniforms in the previous volumes when they dived back into Underworld? Because they did dive twice. One was at the end of, what was that? Alicization Lasting, the Prologue 3 chapter at the very end, which continued later. And then they had a second dive in Unital Ring 3.
Yes, they dived in again, but they didn't really get to meet any of the Integrity pilots. They appeared in... well, basically, when they logged in, they found themselves in the same spot where they had logged out, and none of the Integrity pilots were around. They only met Felusi, and while talking to him...
Who was that again? That was Laurannei's little brother, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, while talking to Felusi, they all found out that he had problems with swords, and Kirito wanted to help him out with, of course, Incarnation. And that Incarnation got set off the local police, because it's considered as a weapon of mass destruction.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's getting us too close into the stupid rumor of Kirito merged with his avatar and shook the universe.
So when the police arrived, Kirito had the girls log out to safety just in case, and he was the only one who went in with the police.
I like that you completely ignored the stupidity that I mentioned. And just moved on like nothing happened. That was probably the best idea. Maybe the internet should do that more. Okay, I'm assuming we're moving to the next one. It's just a map of the Norlangarth North Empire. Things have changed. We do have a space base over there.
Yes,
and a massive highway in the middle.
Well,
do we know anything as to how Underworld has changed in this time? Did we spend enough time to see what actually changed in the culture and stuff?
Well, basically, now Centauri has not only humans, but also the demi-human races, and it's become much more technologically advanced. They even have the equivalent of cars.
Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much all we know, I imagine.
Well, we do know that the central cathedral was the royal palace, and where the Star King and Queen lived. But since they have been gone for 30 years, Underworld is now under the administration of other people.
Okay, one thing I can ask is that I can still see the everlasting wall standing. This is kind of a surprise question because it came onto me. But the everlasting walls are still there, right?
Well, yes.
I can see some small place to actually go through the walls closer to the cathedral. Not sure if that's intentional or not. But do people actually live together? Much more of a mixed? Well, demi-humans are here, so I'd imagine the answer is yes anyways, but you know what I mean.
Well, we didn't really get that much of a look at what life is now in the Underworld.
I see.
We basically got a short stroll through the street, and then Kirito getting a car ride to be questioned about using incarnation.
With Eugeo 2.0.
No, he wasn't questioned by Eugeo 2.2. He was questioned by some other guy, and Eugeo 2.2 sent Theseus and Laurannei's descendants to go pick him up. Basically, he stopped the questioning.
Uh-huh. But we have no idea who he really is, do we? Or why he looks so much like Eugeo.
Currently not. We only know that he's the head integrity knight. Other than the integrity pilot.
Yep.
Well, in Japanese, both knight and pilot are basically pronounced the same, but with different kanji.
Oh.
In the knight version just contains the kanji for a horse, while pilot contains the kanji for machine.
So wait, it still is Seigo Kushi?
Yes. And I've seen people not be able to see the difference just because they see the pronunciation but don't look at the fact that the terms themselves are actually different, even though they're homonyms.
That's why you can't always trust machine translation, can you? Or you can. Because that still reads the kanji as the correct context.
I'm not sure how well Google will handle newly created terms that don't really mean anything in real life.
Machine translation is weird. Let's not get too into that. So, that gets us to the first black and white illustration. We see again Kirito and Asuna fighting the Life Harvester. I imagine they're actually beating it, but we don't have anything to say here, do we? We don't even see any skills.
I haven't read the preview yet, so I don't really know what happened. I'll be reading it all in one go.
That's what people are doing with the anime. Wait until everything's released and then get into it. So next one. From here onwards, we are actually moving on to the leaked images. So full disclaimer that we do not know if it's the correct order that we have here. it very likely isn't. So take the order with a grain of salt. But this is the one where we have Mutasina, where she's holding her eye, the left one. I would love to make a seal of the right eye joke here, but that doesn't match because that's her left eye. So I am left without any jokes. I can't be the funny guy. And it's double sad because we don't have anything to say regarding this image, do we? Zero context, it's just a cool Mutasina shot.
Well, I assume that it takes place in the battle, probably in the one where we saw the color illustration. But other than that, it's anything goes at this point.
Well, we can talk a little bit about Mutasina. We don't know her real identity, do we? We have assumptions that she is Kamura Shikimi, which gets us into a huge rabbit hole, but do you think it's Kamura?
Probably. Reki isn't exactly being subtle.
Yeah, that Mutasina being written the other way around is Anisatum, which means Shikimi in flower language or something.
Isn't that just the Japanese name for it?
I don't know, I am not a flower specialist. Just to
Shikimi,
mention for those who don't know.
Shikimi is just Japanese star anise or Elysium anisatum. So basically, Shikimi is Japanese while anisatum is Latin.
I see. And Mutasina is Anisatum the other way around. And for those who don't know why Kamura is a kind of a big deal and a huge rabbit hole for most of us, Kamura is the owner for and the developer for God damn it, this is a bad time to forget tech names. Not the Hemisphere, the other one, Ogma, yes, thank you. Too many devices with my PS5 next to me, I don't remember any of them. So Kamura still has the rights for Ogma and not Unital Ring, Ordinal Scale as well. They are still operating, it's running.
And they also have the rights to Yuna, the AI idol. Because the Professor Shigemura had to concede his rights to the AI when he kind of tried to get thousands of people brain fried.
Yeah, that probably gets you in trouble. He got out of it though.
The incident itself was basically covered up, so Ordinal Scale is still around, and Kamura didn't get any pushback for it, but they silently let Shigemura off their employees list.
Kikoko is doing one hell of a job, throwing things under the rug, doesn't he?
Well, he probably had his own motivations. He just wanted Shigemura's help with Alicization. I'm surprised that Shigemura didn't actually come up in Alicization after all that foreshadowing.
Alicization anime, to be specific, because the story was written after the Alicization light novels ended. And in fact, I wanted to get more into that, but we kept talking. So if you want to know, this is all tying into Ordinal Scale epilogue stuff with Sword Online Cordial Chords, you can actually read a fan translation of it, translated by Gsimenas right here, on Dreadful Decoding, if you want to know what happened with Yuna and Eiji and how they were able to join in during the events in War of Underworld. If you're part of the dub audience, I mean, what are you doing in the Unital Ring video? But still, you can go ahead and read that on Dreadful Decoding. I also have a summary video on my channel if you're more into narration kind of stuff. But I still do recommend reading the book. I dropped a lot of, trivia related stuff. There is a whole lot of information. It's almost like half that book is information, isn't it? I really enjoyed Hopeful Chant more.
Just a note that Cordial Chords isn't actually the end of the Eiji and Yuna saga. Kawahara was actually planning to expand upon them before they got into the anime, but COVID happened and his plans kind of got frozen up. It's
not just his plans, isn't it? Atashi was quite furious about the Progressive becoming an anime. I saw that on Twitter. She was quite mad that Reki got entangled in yet another anime project instead of having a more relaxed lifestyle finally.
Well, no wonder that he can complete his side projects at this rate.
He's not even properly progressing in the main projects. I mean, Progressive is a main project, isn't it?
Well, it's
one out of
main
4 of it.
project.
Yeah, we have to divide it like that at this point. Secondary main project. But before moving on from the screenshot, the illustration, Kamura is, well, this is kind of Accel World spoilers, and we're not exactly Accel World specialists here, so I can't go too in depth, but Kamura is also the surname of Kuruyukime's biological mother, so that's yet another huge tie from SAO to Accel World, isn't it?
Probably. I haven't read Accel World, so I have no idea.
Probably. I mean, a lot of things we're talking about in this video is probably. That comes with the context. Let's move over to the next illustration. Yep, there we go. And again, these are grainy images because they are leaks. The proper illustrations will be crystal clean. So we have Kirito showing the others.
Showing off his masochism. I mean the brand that chokes him whenever he displeases his master.
Exactly.
That apparently doesn't know that he's a servant of hers.
Wait, what did you just say? The last bit?
Mutasina isn't aware that Kirito is branded.
Oh, so by this point...
She isn't aware that he was present at that venue.
Uh-huh.
So, at least as far as we know.
But in the colored illustration...
Arabel there, but they were in the sidelines to avoid attention, and Mutasina acted just when they were about to leave the scene.
Yeah, but judging from the colored illustration, we can assume she finally knows, I guess? Maybe the illustration is when she actually knows. Because Kirito looks in pain. In the colored one at the beginning.
Yeah. I know.
These are all assumptions.
I'm not sure what the sequence of events are. But in the previous volume, when he got branded, he wanted to keep it a secret even from his friends, aside from AGGO, who saw him get branded.
Oh, so this is him coming out that he has the brand, and that's why AGGO is not even surprised? She's like, yes, with the hand out. Yeah, whatever, Kibo. Wait, I had an actual agenda with this image. Wasn't it the side characters? I was supposed to talk about the side characters. Yes. So Reki had recently, in some interviews said that he would give some other side characters their time to shines. Not exact words, but roughly the meaning. So what's the situation with the main side characters? So to say Leafa, Sinon and Alice, as well as the more Deban squad, which is Liz and Silica, if I'm not forgetting anyone, and the non-female characters, which is an entirely separate category, Klein and Agil. How much screen time are they actually getting in Unital Ring?
In volume 21, it had several chapters that were from Silica's perspective, where she was basically, not sure if the narrator, but basically it was all from her perspective of what was happening, because she, Elizabeth, and Yui were separate from Kirito's gangs. Since when the merge happened, they were farming on a different floor. And while Kirito and Co crash landed with their log house at the edge of what we know of the map, Silica and Elizabeth actually crashed near Aincrab. So they crashed into a wasteland where they had to fend for their survival. And Volume 21 has a few chapters where they met indigenous NPCs, befriend them, and then follow them to a nearby crash site where something, aka the log house, crashed down, and that's where they find Kirito and gang being attacked by what they thought were just friendly players.
Huh. It's certainly interesting to have perspective from someone who's not part of that main side character cast, you know? We had Alicization, where we had Leafa and Sinon and Asuna's perspectives, but that we had in earlier volumes as well from those specific characters. And from other characters, we basically didn't have anything, did we? Maybe the Aincrad side stories? The Silica, Lisbeth, and Sachi episodes? I don't remember.
Sachi didn't have Sachi's perspective, but still Kirito's.
But the others were from their perspective, right?
Yes,
So
Silica and Lisbeth was.
So this is not the first
story was from Asuna's perspective. Now, Volume 21 had basically Kirito, Alice, Asuna, Lisbeth, Silica, Yui. Then, and they also brought Leafa over. Leafa wasn't logged in when the whole thing happened, but they needed someone who had an actual weapon equipped because they didn't have anything equipped because Kirito was doing homework and other girls had just entered the log house. So they called in Leafa for some manual labor to get some materials because she was the only one with a sword equipped, and the rest of them couldn't equip anything that was too heavy for a level 1 to handle.
That comes in during what happens during the conversion period when they get sucked into Unital Ring, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we mentioned that in our introduction video, so go check that out because we're probably not gonna reiterate on what we said.
Now, as for Sinon was actually playing GGO when the whole merge thing happened, so she was basically spawned in an entirely different area from the rest of them, where all the GGO players spawned. And unlike the others, she had basically went through a series of events, one worse after the other, that led her to falling asleep in a cave or something. And when she woke up, she realized she was already past the leniency period in the game, where the game didn't punish you for not eating and stuff and let you use your old gear. So when she woke up, she was already very thirsty, someone hungry, and couldn't use her gear anymore.
You said all the other GGO players. I wonder if Len and Fukajiro and the others are there.
They didn't get referenced so far.
I'm still mad they didn't get Deban during War of Underworld anime as well. That was the simplest cameo opportunity for them. That was sad.
And I assume that they didn't get their Deban in Volume 23 because basically Sinon got some misleading things happened there, where some players logged out, and while they were logged out, they got assaulted by monsters and killed. And then when their friends logged in, they noticed that their friends were dead, and they blamed it on her.
When you log out, does your body not disappear?
It still remains in the game, so like survival games in general.
So you really need to be in a safe spot before you log out.
And they didn't know about that. So basically, it was just a very great misunderstanding, and it spiraled from there. And Volume 23 is basically of how Kirito goes out with a gang of his friends to reunite with Sinon and bring her back into their fortress of a log house.
Oh yeah, I saw that in the Volume 23 map illustration. That was the Fort something something, where people called it the Kirito Land?
Kirito Town.
Yes, Kirito Land was from Integral Factor. God damn it.
And basically, Sinon also befriended some NPCs in the area, but those NPCs were bird people. And along the way, she also met some rat people who she also befriended, and they ended up bringing the rat people with them due to reasons.
Okay, we were kind of derailing. I just realized.
Anyway,
we were talking about the deban of the other characters? Like, do they get any sequences, even if it's not from their point of view? Like, we can see Klein, Lisbeth, and Leafa right there in that illustration.
Well, I was trying to get to it.
Oh, sorry about that.
Volume 23 had, because it was basically a story about getting Sinon back, it had some chapters from her perspective to show what was going on her side. And along the way, and when they met midway through, they also got joined by Klein and Agil. They got joined because Klein and Agil spawned in the ALO player starting point because they only logged in after the whole merger thing happened. But Klein had, due to reasons, inherited a pursuit skill that allowed him to basically track friends of his.
So Klein was indeed very cool. Do we agree on that?
Well, Klein inherited the skill because he used it to try and track down a certain NPC in ALO that he wanted to date. So
okay, that's where we leave it. That was unexpected.
That's where Klein and Agil joined the group. They basically tracked down Kirito's gang while they were en route to Sinon due to Klein's skill, while AGGO joined in Volume 24, where Kirito had to go out with Alice to pick her up from the ALO starting point. And that's where they met Mutasina as well. Or basically saw her from a distance because Mutasina didn't, as far as we know, never saw them.
Oh, right, that was the colored illustration in the previous book, right?
Yes.
I remember that, yeah. One last thing before we move on from this illustration. Eiji. Where is he? He still hasn't appeared, did he?
No sign of him yet. I was honestly expecting him to show up at some point, seeing as Unital had appeared in Ordinal Scale Lore, so I thought it would be tied in somehow. And even more so when Eiji got included in the War of Underworld anime. So I thought that he was being made relevant.
It was the next logical choice, wasn't it?
But maybe he'll become relevant later on the story. Hopefully. Knowing Kawahara, he is can't fit everything in the book. Even in the latest book, he had to cut down on Asuna's Deban just because he wrote too much of Kirito and AGGO's adventures.
Watch Eiji being actually included in Unital Ring, but then cut out to be a side story or something.
Well, I hope that won't be the case. SAO does need some decent male characters to balance out the cast.
Oi, Klein is very decent, thank you very much.
And he doesn't get much Deban, so...
Well, we should get more too. But anyways, for those who don't know, Unital was actually part of Ordinal Scale Lore, the game's lore. As Gsimenas mentioned, the problem is that was never featured in the movie itself. That was in promotional materials, in adaptation content,
it was mentioned in a pamphlet that was distributed to people who went to the movie.
Right, that also had all the sword names and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Basically, Ordinal Scale, the game that you saw in the movie, has an entirely established lore with things happening with factions fighting each other and a reason for it as well. And the Unital, which is again spelled with the same kana, so pronounced Unital.
As in unite all.
Exactly.
Everything.
It comes from the word unite, and it unites all. So that's why it's Unital, at least the wordplay kind of
so
on the pronunciation. Sorry?
Or so we think, at least.
Exactly. Still, no exact confirmation. Reki didn't say anything, but just to fill that information hole, what was I gonna say? Oh yes, the Unital was, and I will quote from our wiki article here, Unital is one of the countless multiverses in existence and is assumed to be attempting to unite all universes. Nothing is known about its civilization or its inhabitants, and even the name Unital was created by Terrans. The thing is, we're going back over to the Kamura debacle we had earlier. Kamura is the company that operates Ordinal Scale, so they have all this lore and stuff created themselves. And now the entire game over here is called Unital Ring. Is there a connection? Do you see a connection?
Well, based on the fact that in one case, I think that the names are similar because the intention is similar. In Ordinal Scale's case, Unital is named because the lore is that Unital wants to unite everything, while in Unital Ring, all the games got united into one.
But that's the exact same concept when you think about it. Uniting all these, well, in Ordinal Scale's case, it's multiverses, and in this case, the games, they are their own universes.
And the games could be considered their own multiverses.
Exactly. Like, that was the point. That begs the question, is it Kamura's plan, or if our assumptions are correct, Mutasina's plan to actually have this entire thing converge, and she's just experimenting on whatever it is that she's trying to experiment on?
Currently, it's open to interpretation, especially since Ordinal Scale didn't actually get brought into Unital Rings, as far as we know.
Alright, but isn't that a bit different with Ordinal Scale? Again, we're going on a tangent here, but Ordinal Scale just uses SAO servers, not the seed.
No, it doesn't use the seed, but as in Unital Ring hasn't made Ordinal Scale relevant to its story yet. That's what I meant.
Okay, got it. So finally, moving on to the next illustration from this naked Kirito with the neck toy. We got a lovely Asuna.
A brand.
Yes, that's not exactly a toy. It's more like a tattoo, right?
Joker of the Damned. For reference.
Yes. So next up we have the lovely Asuna illustration in her Unital Ring armor, from what I can see, smiling, very wholesome. And Val is gonna be really angry with us, but I don't think we have anything to say or talk about here, do we?
I have no idea what the context for this is. Probably post-Mutasina battle.
That's probably the best way to get out of Val's rage area, and I will have to shoulder it because I am the one who said we don't have anything to say here. Perfect. So next one is Mutasina battle. Again, we are absolutely unsure about the order of these illustrations, so they're probably out of order. But this is from the Mutasina battle, and from what I'm seeing, this illustration really reminds me of the Quinella illustration we had back in Alicization, when Eugeo was going for Quinella and Quinella was very surprised, while Eugeo wasn't. In this case, Kirito appears to be somewhat surprised as well by whatever is happening to Mutasina. I'm not sure what else to say.
I'm personally getting the impression that Kirito's trying to cut down her staff or something to break the spell. But that's my guess to what's going on. Kind of hard to tell without context.
Good guess, because back in the colored illustration we saw she was controlling with the staff, right? Her staff was also glowing along with the brand people had around their necks. That might be a good guess, actually.
Because Kirito in this scene looks like he's going in for the killers. At least that's how I saw the illustration. But without context, it's basically just random guessing.
Oh my god, it feels like Kirito has a reflection on his eyes of a face as well, but that's so grainy that I really can't say anything. I just realized. But yeah, can't say anything. Okay, moving on to the next one, and as we promised, we see the, well, Eugeo look-alike, kind of twins, but this is still, as far as we know, Unital Ring, not Underworld, right?
Yes. Can even see that they're wearing something on their collars that looks identical to Mutasina's.
I mean, it is also concealing the brand from what I can see, but it's the exact neck piece that Mutasina has. Wait, let me show in a different illustration right here. this neck piece. I am not sure if my cursor is being... No, I disabled my cursor, so you gotta... It is clear to see the neck piece on Mutasina is the exact same as the henchmen over here, which indicates they are allies from before, right? Not just random people.
Yes, but I'm not sure if it's just random minions or is it one of those guys who were in her own team and willingly subjected themselves to the brand.
But they have to be somewhat relevant.
Because these guys look like elites or something. You can see some other character in the background who doesn't sport the fancy hats.
Isn't the character... Oh wait, I always thought that was Mutasina. Why did I think that? The hair doesn't even match up. I'm stupid. But yeah.
Well, maybe it is, I'm not sure. But basically, I don't know if all of them get the fancy uniform. These guys look like... From their expressions, they look more skilled than the average Joe.
Yeah, exactly. And that was what I wanted to tie into as well. Like, this is the silhouette. This ended up being the silhouette that we see on the cover that we previously thought was Eolyne, right? That's a perfect match right there.
I was guessing that it was Eolyne, but I didn't take part in the discussions because I personally don't like to speculate ahead of time without any...
Yes, you're above us, GSI. Thank you.
it's C, not GSI.
Well, I didn't understand what you said.
I said that the nickname is pronounced C, not GSI.
Yeah, well, I'm used to...
Not an acronym.
I either say Gsimenas or GSI individual letters, because otherwise it sounds funny for me. But fine, I'll say Gsi. Anyways, moving back to where we were. Where were we actually? In this one. So yeah, Asuna and Kirito fighting against these seemingly important gentlemen that are also hidden in the cover. Moving on, these are the Underworld images. We got 3 final images that are all from Underworld. None of which we have any context for, so not like we can say much here. Hopefully we'll get more information about what's happening in Underworld this time around.
Well, they look like they're in one of Underworld's cars. That's about all we can say.
Oh yeah, 2 of them at the very least. We'll get there in a second, but we barely had any Underworld time in previous books, didn't we? It was like 5 minutes, not 5 minutes, but a short time dictated by Rinko.
Well, the previous volume had an entire chapter dedicated to it, but it was basically a lot of time with Felucci and just a few moments at the very end where Eolyne got teased.
That pretty much blue-balled the entire community. So yeah, looking at this illustration, we can see Alice in the back, smiling. Laurannei is probably teasing Stica, from what I can guess, based on what's happening. And considering these 3 are in a car, the next illustration, this is probably a different car, right? With Kirito and Eolyne?
Not sure, really.
I mean, Kirito is in the right seat over here as well. Seems like a different carriage.
Or it could be has 9 seats and has 3 rows for all we know. So kind of too early to say.
Right, that actually does make sense. But we see Kirito is crying. They had a moment with I always keep saying Eugeo, Eolyne, in the previous novel as well, but Kirito did not have a crying reaction, so I'd imagine, you know, somewhat more emotional going on here, maybe remembering Eugeo, maybe talking about Eugeo. Of course, it's all hypothetical question. Yes, I do know. We don't know.
Sio nihil stia. I know that I know nothing.
That's a good way to not answer my question, thank you. Yeah, it's always nice when Kirito is in pain. That's always the high point of SAO. Reki loves doing that. Please give more Reona songs. And the last one has been a huge topic of wild speculation, let's say. But we can assume, I mean, let's not say assume, but we can guess the person in the background next to the tree is Silica, who was deep frozen during the 200-year period to wait for Alice to come back.
Well, that's pretty obvious since it was mentioned in the previous novels that she's waiting at the tree. But other than that, we have...
And the anime showed it as well. One of the rare good things that it did. I shouldn't really antagonize the anime in this video. That's an entirely different topic. And aside from Silica, we're seeing two other figures. Now, the topic of speculation is the identity of these figures, of course, to the right and the left. Right one kind of looks like Ronye/Laurannei. Left one, it doesn't exactly look like Tise or Stica, does she? She looks more like Sortilina with the long hair in the back especially. And
or she could have changed her hair over time. Who knows?
That doesn't happen in Japanese content. Hair stays the same.
Till it's Ronnie.
The key detail is, what threw most people off is that they are holding swords in this era. I mean, after the 200-year period, we have integrity pilots. They don't really have swords, do they? Or do they?
Divine objects were sealed off along with the integrity denied order. Whatever that's supposed to mean.
So even when we know stuff, we don't know stuff.
Basically, we were getting a lot of teases, but that only spark unanswered questions.
Do you actually expect we get some answers regarding Underworld in this volume?
I'm not sure how long the Underworld part is going to be in this volume. Seeing as the last one was just basically nearly an afterthought. Just one chapter out of 10 devoted to Underworld. And I wouldn't really expect Underworld to take up more than 1/4 of the volume based on the amount of illustrations, but it will be probably more than the previous volume due to having more illustrations.
It's gonna be interesting to see where Underworld actually starts tying in. I mean, we still don't have any information on that, what was it, Inter-Intelligence War?
Yeah, we don't really know what that is, but I assume that it'll tie in Underworld to Unital Ring in some form.
I really do get the feeling that the Unital Ring part of Unital Ring will just connect to the Underworld section with a huge twist like we had with Alicization uniting at the end. That is also uniting. Why is everything uniting? Why is all the trouble always comes from uniting stuff?
That's was a Reki's shtick.
He calls it uniting, nobody unites. He calls it dividing, nobody gets divided. But that pretty much covers everything we have. This is the last illustration, right? Yep, this is the final one. Do you have any particular expectations from Unital Ring 4? Which is coming out in less than 24 hours. So we'll have our answer soon anyways. But if you want to go on record and end up turning out to be wrong, feel free to state something.
I currently don't have anything specific to state. I'm just waiting for the volume to come out and start reading it instead of speculating about it for no reason.
Yeah, I can tell you have a lot of fun with speculating stuff. That's been the life of Accel World readers. Speculating when the two series are gonna tie in. But I guess that's all we have today, don't we? Oh my god, it's been an hour and 4 minutes, so I'd say that's long enough. Good job, I'd say that was a good try, good first try. What would you say?
Well, I'm not sure how the final product will look like.
Oh, thank you for your vote of confidence. Thank you very much to everyone who's been around. Hope you enjoyed this. Please do let us know how much you enjoyed this. Please make Gsimenas happy, so we may in the future turn these into live streams, perhaps live Q&A sessions, etc. from our walking encyclopedia right here. But only time will tell. So that was pretty much my ending sentence. I probably shouldn't have said so. Thank you very much for watching, for listening, and hopefully we will see you in the next one. This has been the Sword Art Online Wikia Overlord Gsimenas himself, and I have been Gamerturk. Until then, stay cool. Say a finishing statement, GSI. Something like, stay cool, but not as cool.
I'm not sure why.
Perfect ending.